Well, welcome everyone to the Buddhist Society for this special evening with the Rubin Museum. There is at the moment down in Docklands, there is an exhibition which you'll be told about by our guest tonight, Mr. Tim McHenry. I'm not going to take up time, from precious time I should say, from our speaker, because so Mr. Tim McHenry is the creative lead of the Mandala project, which is put on by the Rubin Museum. In particular, we're dealing with the teachings of Vairocana, one of the great bodhisattvas, mahasattvas of the Mahayana tradition. So thank you very much. Without more ado, thank you so much, Tim, for coming, and a very big welcome from us. Thank you so much, Tim.
Thank you, Desmond.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Hello, everyone. A question for you before we start. When was the last time any of you stepped inside a painting? When did you step inside a painting? Ever? Never? Well, what? Not even when you were 5, maybe, as courtesy of a movie.
Grimm's fairy tales.
There you go. That picture book that you were able to open up, and you imagined yourself inside the sort of centerfold, the crease between the pages, and that you could hide behind the copse while the knights rode by, and then you could make a dash for it across the hill to that magic kingdom, right? So, well, in Tibetan Buddhist practice, in Tantra, stepping inside paintings is kind of de rigueur, right? And those paintings are called mandalas. Now, you know, Joseph Campbell said, if you want to make something sacred, you draw a circle around it. And within a circle, there's no wrong place to be. Likewise, with a mandala, it means circle, perfect circle. And so that becomes the focus and the concentration of our intention in this particular tradition. Now, you may have seen mandalas in this two-dimensional form here, as the sun mandala variety, which is then painstakingly minutes later, as a sign of the ephemeral nature of all things. There are three-dimensional mandalas that look like palaces, and there are four-dimensional mandalas that are representations of space and time, which themselves are microcosms of your mind, or at least your mind as it could be if you practiced in this particular tradition. You know, with compartmentalized behaviors, like in rooms, and so that's great, but I think in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, they take it a little step further. You're offered to be your own interior designer. You can strip down that angry-looking wallpaper in the hall. You can move your bed from that dank little corner you had it in and move it out to the open window and feel the breeze. In other words, in Tantra, beam if you wanted to, if you have the right teacher. But the whole point is you can change your lived-in environment by changing your perception of that lived-in environment. And that's the whole point of this particular teaching. You can change. The things that trouble you, you can convert that energy that you consume, like anger, into a wisdom. And that's the offering of the really just uses this as a tool, as a vehicle for understanding who they are and where they need to be and how they need to be. So what I'm showing you here is of people actually standing in the center of the Vairocana mandala. They're not actually stepping on any of the iconography because that has been displaced onto the screen behind them, behind the teacher. But they physically stepped inside, and this was actually the germ of the Mandala Lab, which the Rubin Museum of Art created, which is now in London at Canary Wharf, and you can visit through to the 25th of November. You can actually step inside the painting and experience metaphors for what the tantric teachings are actually about, even if what you do in the lab is not, of course, what a tantric practitioner would do. For that, you need the teacher, right? So what we're going to explore now is really the reasons why we thought we wanted to bring this to you. And this is how the Mandala Lab looks in New York on one of the floors, and this is what the painting looks like. And you'll see the Vairocana Buddha is in the center, and there are 4 chambers circling the center, and each represents an afflictive emotion, an emotional state that gets in the way of you achieving equanimity. And they are those that you just saw there. So why now? Well, the reason why we wanted to do this now, and I need to advance this a little better. I've lost the ability to do so, but the reason why we wanted to do this now is because we are in a state of considerable turmoil. Politics is polarized, we have a climate crisis on our doorstep, and those who are going to suffer most from it are the underprivileged and our children. And so this teaching tool can be translated into an immediacy that our younger generation can appreciate, because the Mandala Lab was really conceived as a space that an 8-year-old or an 88-year-old could feel perfectly attuned to and interact with. So just give me a moment and let's see how I can get out of this looping thing. There we go. All right. Climate crisis as an example. I think we're on track now. Good. So what might a visitor, young or older, actually experience in this Mandala Lab? Well, we really wanted to create this fusion between Buddhist psychology, cutting-edge neuroscience, contemporary design, and artistic experience. And so what we did was really adopt the sort of Tibetan Buddhist idea of notri, which is engagement, but embodied engagement. And that's a really important point, because Laila Devachi, who really guided us on part of the lab, she's in charge of the memory lab at Columbia University. She said she'd run a study with students, and it was during COVID, and they were trying to assess how well students could learn information from screens, like we all had to at the time. And it was discovered that if the student actually activated a piece of information on the screen by touching it, just by touching it, that increased their ability to absorb that information and retain it by 15%. That's already considerable. In other words, if you engage bodily with an information, you are more likely to retain that. So there's an emotional relationship to the information and what motivates you. So this has to be a physical journey, we decided. People actually have to wander inside the spaces of the mandala itself in order to activate memorization and emotional engagement, because this is all about emotions. And so as you can see here, the mandala is really divided into these 4 chambers with a central one in the middle, and each chamber has an afflictive emotion that gets in the way of you understanding the connection of the whole. And yet, each emotion that's sort of represented somewhat negatively here in terms of anger and pride and so, of course, isn't negative at all. It's exactly that emotion that you need in order to acquire this particular wisdom. It is the tool. So there's no positive or negative. It's this non-dual acceptance that the cutting edge of anger is the very thing that can cut through your confusion. So what do we do in the Mandala Lab? Well, in the first section that we introduce people to, which is in the south, it's got the color of yellow, and it's about pride. It's about that sort of element that tries to make you think that you're on either higher or lower plane than others. And I just want to refer to two interesting sources. One, a traditional one, and one not. So the one that is traditional comes from Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism by Chogyam Trungpa, which many of you probably know. And it's worth reading out his description of this southern region in our minds, in our emotional configuration. He says, Ratna is associated with pride and earth, solidity, mountains, hills, pyramids, buildings. I am completely secure. I am what I am. It's a very proud way of looking at oneself. This means that one is afraid to loosen up and is continually piling up defenses, building a fortress. Equally, Ratna is the wisdom of equanimity, which is all-pervading. Whether you construct buildings out of earth or whether you simply leave the earth as it is still earth. It is the same thing. So our job was to translate this interpretation of the teaching into an experience that would help a visitor register what was meant by these teachings. How to convert pride into the wisdom of equality or equanimity. And so we present the visitor with a funhouse mirror that they have to look into. And you know, it's not the most comfortable thing in the world to actually sort of look at yourself and examine and be honest. Usually hate what you see, right? Or you might love what you see. Either way, there's a little bit of a comeuppance, because to the left here, there are 4 bins above which are arrogance, entitlement, low self-esteem, and gloating, as qualities that we all harbor to a lesser or greater degree, and all you have to do, it's a very easy task, well, no, it's a very simple task, it's not easy, I admit, is take a token out of the bin and decide which of these receptacles you're going to drop your token in. And we just had our first 2 school groups today, this morning at Canary Wharf, and this was a fascinating exercise for them, of course, because this was probably the first time these 7-year-olds really had to confront this issue about, you know, what am I prepared to admit in front of my peers? That's also a challenge. But nonetheless, whatever you choose to do, whichever one you drop your token in, the point is this: your token is going to make a sound when it hits all the other tokens. And that sound just alerts you to the fact that, wait a moment, there are other people like me. I'm not alone. We all suffer in this way. We all have these concepts that we are somewhat separate from everybody else. And so that is the realization that can lead to the wisdom of equality. It's very simple. So here you see some early visitors at our installation of the Mandala Lab in Bilbao, where we opened this for the first time last spring as part of the Wellbeing Summit. And now that self-same installation is, as I say, at Union Square, just off the Jubilee line in Canary Wharf. So this is, we don't have sound for this, unfortunately, but this is Zanab Salbi and the neuroscientist Richie Davidson, who came to the lab and had to decide which of these bins they were going to go, and they both went for arrogance, interestingly enough. There we go, clunk.
Can you go for all of them, Tim?
Yes, all the experiences? Yes, we will. Yes, oh yes. Oh, in terms of choosing? Well, some teachers have been through the lab, of course, and didn't recognize themselves in any of these bins, of course. And it's true, you may not either. And then great, you get a free pass, go to the next one. That's okay. It's a question of what you recognize in yourself, and it's just a moment of truth for you. There's no point going through this unless you're honest, right? And so you find that you're not the mountain you thought you were, and you're not even part of a range, you're just on a level plane with everybody else.
If I can interject.
Yes, Desmond, please.
It's a very interesting one, because it's really the narcissism, isn't it?
It is.
Which is the modern disease.
I don't know how modern it is. Because Narcissus, after all, was a young man from the Greek myths, and so I think it's well embedded in our psyche, right? To either admire ourselves for what we have achieved or how we look, or, and this is one of the most interesting things, the low self-esteem bin was actually the most populated in London to date. And we've had 6,000 people come through in the first 10 days. And so that's a marker of where we think we stand in our relationship with others. Quite telling. In New York, it's neck and neck, arrogance and low self-esteem. So each society has a different view of itself. Bilbao, yes, the low self-esteem was super high.
Was it?
Was super high, yeah, yeah. So, our next section challenges the findings of the first. So the next section is all about attachment. And what are we attached to? We are attached to our sense of self, of course. We kind of covered that one. We are also attached to our lives, our habits, our prejudices, and, our pets. So here, we wanted to explore this, well, let's hear from Jürgen Trumper about what he considers attachment is. So, because that will give you a good grounding here. So, this is the Padma energy. Padma is connected with passion, a grasping quality, a desire to possess. In the background of passion, there is the instinct towards union, wanting to be completely one with something, but passion has an hysterical quality, a neurotic quality that ignores the real state of being united and instead wants to possess in order to become united. Passion defeats its own purpose automatically. In the case of discriminating awareness, which is the wisdom aspect of passion, one sees the quality of this and that precisely and sharply. In other words, communication takes place. So, what I didn't articulate before is that each of these quadrants have not only this afflictive energy, but also are represented by an element. And in this case, it's the element, the red element of fire. And what does fire do? It destroys, it consumes. But what can it also do? It can warm. It has the possibility to share its warmth with us in compassion. And so again, the element has as much of a flip side as you have the potential to recognize in each of these chambers. So what we did here was this, and I'm going to wander around a little bit, so I'm sorry for you folks on Zoom, you won't experience the olfaction element of this particular presentation, but let me just do this. Desmond, what do you smell? He likes it, clearly. It is quite pleasant. Would you like to have a sniff? What emotion arose in you when you smelt that? Yes, hello.
It was like fresh laundry. It was a nice,
right? Pleasant. Anybody else? Hello.
I was initially unfamiliar.
Yeah.
I didn't know what it is, but then there was a touch of confectionery.
Yeah. And was it pleasant for you? Yeah. Hello. The impression is pleasant. Okay. So fresh laundry it is. I mean, it's laundry soap, right? And Persil, by the way, if anybody wants to go out to the shops and go and get it. However, that may be, this is not an advertisement for Persil or anything else. So we asked and invited 6 different artists from around the world to share with us it's an attachment to an association that we've experienced. And those memories stay with us and forge our identity. A neuroscientist who came through to the lab some months after we opened in New York in 2021 shared with me a fact that I didn't know at the time, which was that dementia sufferers, 1/3 of them have lost their sense of smell. Their sense that smell actually underscores in ourselves. Smell is a vital sense. Some of us during COVID lost our sense of smell. It was very disorienting. So smell works in a very interesting way, in a subliminal way. It latches onto the thalamus in a single synaptic connection. In other words, it's so unbidden in its interaction and its lodging in associations. But these 6 artists chose smells that they know triggers a very strong reaction. And laundry was one. So the story, I mean, I'd love to play the film for you, but you'll have to come to the lab yourself and experience it. The story of the Tibetan filmmaker and artist Tenzin Chokle is this. He was born in a refugee camp in Dharamsala. His parents had come out of Tibet, and they discovered that his mother was dying of cancer, very painfully. And so his 2 sisters came to see their mother, presumably for the last time, from the United States and from Switzerland. And Tenzin describes how they unpacked their suitcases, and somehow the house was filled with this flowery scent that he'd never experienced before. It was wondrous, it was beautiful. That smell also dissipated. So he thought, well, this is how America, this is how Switzerland smells like, flowery and new and fresh. His mother dies of cancer. And in time, it's Tenzin's turn to experience the West, and he visits one of his sisters in Zurich. And of course, when he enters her apartment, he experiences a smell again and realizes that it's evokes this great and wonderful joy at seeing his sisters, but also, on the other hand, reminds him of the painful loss of his mother. Both joy and sadness are combined in one, in this smell. So it's not the same experience that we have when we smell fresh laundry, or are tucked into bed, or have fresh sheets and feel clean. Those are untrammeled emotions. But for Tenzin, it's much more scent that each artist chose. Your reaction is likely to be considerably different to that of the artist, or indeed the other visitors who have gone before you. And that's the point, the difference. Registering the difference, making room for that variety in how we perceive the world. We all see it, smell it, touch it differently, based on our conditioning, our DNA, our upbringing. So that's the wisdom of discernment. That's the appreciation of difference that can be experienced in this particular chamber in the Mandala Lab in London right now. Now, there is a little bit of a conflict here, of course, because what have we just learnt in the Pride Chamber? We learnt that we're all the same. And in the Attachment Chamber, we learn that we're all different. Which one's right? Have to learn to hold these with respect and understanding as we navigate through our lives and deaths. So we've learned that we're all the same, we've learned that we're all different, and now comes the possibility that we learn that we're all one. This chamber in the north is envy. Green for envy. Let's hear what Chogyam Trungpa has to say about that. So this is the energy of karma, and it's connected with the wisdom of all-accomplishing action. The quality of paranoia falls away, but the qualities of energy, keenness to action, and openness remain. So karma is associated with the emotion of jealousy, envy, and the element of wind. However, the terms jealousy and envy are not powerful and precise enough to describe the quality of karma. Absolute paranoia is probably a good phrase. You feel that you're not going to achieve any of your goals. You become irritated by the accomplishments of other people. You feel left behind and cannot bear to see others surpass you. This fear, this distrust of oneself is connected with the element of wind. Wind never blows in all directions, but it blows in one direction at a time. This is the one-way view of paranoia or envy. It's competitive. It's sharp-elbowed. You want what the other has. There is an interesting book, which is a lot of fun to read, which explores the Vairocana mandala through 26 artists, female artists' work. And it's by a good colleague of mine, Kevin Townley, and it's called Look, 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 Look Again, 5 looks for the 5 chambers. And the way Kevin describes it is kind of fun, and you'll get it straight away and relate to it perhaps. Lastly, the karma family in the north. Karma is the element of air and its color is green. Green with envy, as this is the energy of competition and jealousy. It is always compare and despair time for the karma family person. You've always been more talented than anyone else, but somehow you've been left behind on the ladder of success, and everyone else is laughing at you from their hot tub in Malibu. But you'll show them. You'll dig down deep and come up with a highly personal scripted series to pitch to NBC, only to be informed that they just purchased a show just like it from your ex-wife. And so on and so forth. The fever of competition is cooled by karma's enlightened energy of all-accomplishing wisdom. In other words, competition is a circular fantasy, and when we are truly awake, there is nowhere else to be, nothing else to do. Everything is already accomplished. So what we do here in the Mandala Lab is present you with an orb, an illuminated orb designed by the American and Tibetan artist Weinreb, which has a light source at its center and beams out to the rim and then retreats back to the center on a cycle of 5.5 seconds out, 5.5 seconds in. And you're invited to do something that you all know how to do. What's the first thing that you did when you were born?
Cry? No.
In order to cry, you had to breathe. What's the last thing you're likely to do? Breathe, right? So we know how to do it. We know it's a life force. But what we don't know yet is what life-giving qualities breathing actually has over and above the infusion of oxygen in our lungs. And this shows us. So all you're invited to do in this room is match your breathing rhythm to the light. And it's a slow rhythm, 5.5 seconds in, 5.5 seconds out, more or less. And you know what happens when we humans congregate in a single place and do something at the same rhythmic pace? In psychology, it's called entrainment. What it actually means is that our heart rhythms are starting to align, just as yours did when you were a baby placed on your mother's breast, just as you do when you sing in a choir, chant together, pray together, clap together at a soccer match. Anything that is rhythmic and done in synchronous behavior with other humans will start to make you align with them and make you feel like you belong together. It's purely tribal. It's probably what forged our ability to survive when we were sitting around that campfire and trying to think of ways to ward off that saber-toothed tiger out in the dark. We beat a drum together in unison, and that unison forged a collaborative understanding of how we together could outwit something that was actually physically stronger than ourselves. So the science is really interesting. And what makes this particular installation leading, in a sense, is that it's the pace of the light is based on a neuroscientific study that was conducted in the University of Pavia in Italy in 2001, where they invited contemplative practitioners from all stripes, rosary bead counters, Sufi chanters, to the university, placed them in separate chambers and invited them to do what they do. Count their rosary beads, do their chanting. They were wired up for breathing rate and heart rate. Within 20 minutes, it transpired that every single practitioner, regardless of tradition, settled into this particular breathing pace of about 11 seconds. Why? We needed to know. So a second study had to be conducted. And it turns out when we do this, our blood rises to the brain. Our bodily systems start to fall into coherence. Our parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems start to balance. And particularly if we're breathing through our nose, of course, our nitric oxide to oxygen relationship is off the charts. In other words, oxygen is transported through our systems way more efficiently, which means breathing in this way is the baseline for healing. So come down to the lab and you'll be able to not only heal but also synchronize with others. Because the joke is, if we're all one, there's nobody left to be envious of. And that's not green for envy, but really the green of collaborative growth that we're celebrating in this room. So we hope to see you there. All right. This is all good and dandy, but it would be nothing if we didn't test it. And so we come to this final chamber. It's got the word anger above it. And in this chamber, you get to, bang a gong and dip it into water. So the qualities of this particular energy, Vajra energy, are sharp, diamantine, because Vajra cuts through everything. And so the gong cuts through the water once you struck it and you lure it into that different medium. And what happens to the pitch of the gong when you place it in a different context? It changes kind of marvelously. The water bubbles. It resonates in a totally different way, and it might actually bring a smile to your face. And great, because humor is a great antidote for anger. But what we're really exploring here is, if you leave the gong in the water until everything has settled, you've created a little bit of space in time between your first feelings of anger as you struck the gong and your next action. And out of that liminal space, something is able to grow. And her name is Patience. And she gives the clarity that is the mirror-like wisdom of this particular section of the teaching. So round and round we go, accumulating teachings, accumulating learnings and wisdoms, and contributing to them as well. Because there's a section at the end, in the center, that, even Logan Roy's done it. There's a section where you can actually explore the afflictive states that you want to investigate further once you've left the lab, and you receive a teaching from a teacher, from Mingyur Rinpoche, from a number of different teachings, and you can share your own. And that's great if you can do that, because thereby you increase the momentum by which visitors might take encouragement to keep on going in this direction of self-investigation. So the Mandala Lab is at the Rubin Museum of Art on West 17th Street in Chelsea, Manhattan. And yet, that's our home base, but we've become a global hub, a place where we want to not expect people to come to New York, but actually come to where people are. And so that's why we're in London with the Mandala Lab now. And we hope to see you there. Thank you so much for listening. Happy to take any questions if you like. I don't have all the answers. I just want to say that straight out. Yes, hello.
I would recommend it. I went when you just opened. I
Oh,
would
you
recommend
did?
Everyone should go. It's quite a
Thank you. Well, we do have guides there who can unpack it a little for you, and lots of QR codes, so you can download the audio guide. The audio guide consists of guidance from Ponlop Rinpoche and also John Dunn. And Professor Dunn is not only a scholar of Tibetan Buddhism, but also is attached to the Center for Healthy Minds at Madison, Wisconsin. And so the psychology is if John had to summarize these teachings, it would be this, which he's done for his students as well. It's about not confusing your feelings for an event with the event itself. Simple as that. Don't confuse your feelings about a particular event for the event itself, because your perspective is always going to be too narrow to understand. Hello.
Has it been advertised with many schools in Download, at least in the area?
We've primarily focused on Tower Hamlets because they can get to the lab very easily. If the word spreads, and we've had some leads to help us, sort of let other schools know that we exist, we hope to obviously spread the word that way. Hello.
I've been familiar with the idea of mandala in the usual form, like pictures of one in the book, and I've actually seen one being put together with a grant by Tibetan Buddhists. For about, since the 1970s, I've been interested in Buddhism, and just about a year ago, I saw the word patience. It was Tibetan Buddhist work, and it was patience is accepting the pain inflicted by torture. But there any familiarity with that? I can't recall
Yeah, I think what you might be referring to is the sort of compassion that needs to be exercised if you're going to be free of the resentment and anger when somebody's hurt you badly. I mean, Nelson Mandela, for example, not Mandela, but Mandela, how he got through his imprisonment was by exercising compassion for his torturers, right? That's the only way he was able to survive and rise as a statesman after that experience. And that is a sort of I think, the quality that you might be referring to here in that context. I'm guessing here, but
where the Buddha says, even if you're being sawn in half with a two-handed saw, in other words, two people are sawing you in half, you should, the anger should not arise, or resentment.
Yeah, it was related to anger, yeah.
Was that what you were referring to? It's very kind of vivid. It sets the bar very high.
it sets the bar very high. But there I think, again, Sanskrit have gone through many permutations and revisions and translations like most texts, but the word anger is can be misleading, and I've seen other scholars really refer to it as wrath or wrath, right? So it summons up the energy of action that needs to cut through the situation in a who was advising on the creation of the lab, is there any time in which anger is actually justified? And he said, yes, of course, when exercised with compassion, right? There are times when we see injustices done in our society, many, and what do you do about it? Well, you don't necessarily run into the fray and sort of create havoc. You focus to help the situation, and it won't necessarily be physical, but it's about seeing with clarity the situation so you can better help the people who are suffering under that situation. That's my best interpretation of that expression.
Story, isn't it? The Lama, one of the lamas who got it fell into the hands of the Chinese. And when he was being interviewed, he said he just felt sorry for the people who are doing it to him. He said it hurt like heck, but he just felt sorry for them. But it's not.
Yes, because
why are they beating? What are they beating him for? For nothing.
Yeah.
Just without really sorry. But I thought that was a very good sort of way of looking at things.
And it might be the only way.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'd like to thank you very much, Tim, for a very engaging and interesting talk.
Well, I would like to thank
Quite
the Buddhist
apart from the
Society
lab,
for all the work it does. You've only seen with the Mandala Lab one side of the Rubin Museum of Art. The other side, that's a very active side right now, is what we call the Project Himalayan Art, which is our responsibility as stewards of an extraordinary collection of this art form to share and place it in its historical and cultural context. And so we not only have a brand new web portal for it and an exhibition that's traveling university museum galleries around the United States, but also we produced a book that just came out 2 months ago called Himalayan Art in 108 Objects. And Desmond, I'd like to present this to you and the library here at the Buddhist Society as a thank you for inviting me over.
Well,
thank you.
Thank you. This will be a very valued gift from the Rubin Museum. And thank you, Tim. It's many of our members and many members of the public as well. So thank you very much indeed.
Very welcome.
It's a wonderful present. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.